Something has settled in you this week that you have not fully put words to yet. Not a decision exactly, not a conclusion. More like a recognition that arrived without warning. The way things do when they are finally ready to be seen. You have been inside this journey long enough, held the connection long enough, turned the same questions over long enough that something underneath all of it has finally become impossible to ignore. He is not moving. Not because he cannot feel what is between you. Not because the connection is not real. Not because the love is not there. You know all of that. You have known it for longer than you would like to admit. He is not moving for a different reason entirely. And somewhere in the past few days, in the quiet between whatever you have been doing on the surface, you started to feel that reason less as something that is about him and more as something that is reflecting something back to you. This is where things get uncomfortable and important, because for a long time you had been holding the question of his movement as the central unsolved problem, as the variable that, once it changes, will allow everything else to fall into place. And you have been doing the work with that question at the center, growing around it, healing in the direction of it, becoming more patient, more grounded, more spiritually aware, in a process that has been oriented underneath all of it toward the moment when the variable finally changes. But this week, something is asking a different question, not when will he move, but what is being revealed about you by the fact that you have organized so much of yourself around waiting for him to. That is a harder question. It does not have a comfortable answer. And it is exactly the question that Saturn stationing in Aries this week is placing at the center of the field. Because what Saturn is now forcing to slow down, what it is making turn its full attention backward on itself before anything is allowed to move forward, is not his journey. It is yours. Because what Saturn stationing in Aries this week is doing in the collective field is exactly this. It is slowing everything down that has been in motion. Forcing a confrontation with what is real versus what has been hoped for, and for the divine feminine in a twin flame separation. That confrontation is not happening on the outside. It is happening in the most interior room she has, the one where she keeps the honest version of what she knows. If something in you has shifted this week, if you have felt something clarify in a way that is both relieving and terrifying at the same time, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Drop, I see myself clearly now in the comments. Because what you are arriving at right now is not the end of this connection. It is the beginning of something in you that the connection was always trying to catalyze. Before we go any further, I have to put something directly in front of you. Because if you are at the place this script is describing, you are standing at one of the most significant thresholds in the twin flame journey. And this is not the moment for general content. This is the moment for the specific map of your connection, built from your particular energetic blueprint, not someone else's journey or someone else's timing. You have spent a lot of time in the general. In the articles, the videos, the content that explains what twin flame separation is and why it happens and what it means. And all of that has value. But somewhere along the way you crossed a line from needing the explanation to needing something more personal than any general content can provide. A twin flame union personal reading was built for exactly this crossing. Your name, your date of birth, your exact time of birth, your place of birth. Those 4 coordinates become the foundation of a reading built entirely around you, your chart, your soul contract, your specific energetic blueprint. Not a forecast for your sign. Not a general reading about separation that could apply to anyone. A reading that goes into the precise architecture of your particular connection. Where you are in the journey right now. What the universe is currently orchestrating in the space between you. What karmic patterns have been running underneath the surface, what your divine timing looks like in this specific season, and what your soul contract with this person actually says about where this is heading. What arrives in your inbox is a personal audio reading delivered straight to you and a full written report with all of it laid out in a form you can return to again and again. The link is below. If you are ready for the specific map, it is waiting for you. There are different ways a person can be still. There is the stillness of someone who does not feel anything. That is a kind of emptiness, a quiet that is actually quiet with nothing running underneath it. The stillness of a closed chapter, the stillness of genuine indifference. And then there is his kind of stillness, which is not empty at all. His stillness has texture, it has weight, it has the particular quality of something actively held in place. The way you can feel the difference between a door that is simply closed and a door that is being held shut from the inside. You feel that. You have always felt that. The way his silence is not absence, but a kind of presence that is doing something, working at something, maintaining a particular arrangement of things that would rearrange themselves if he stopped working so hard to keep them where they are. That is not the stillness of a man who has moved on. That is the stillness of a man in paralysis. And here is what Saturn stationing in Aries this week is illuminating about that paralysis in a way that other transits have not quite managed. Saturn rules structure. Saturn rules what has been built, what has been maintained, what has been held in place through effort and repetition and the accumulated weight of years. When Saturn slows down, when it stations and begins to gather itself before a retrograde, it turns its full attention onto the structures that have been constructed. Not to destroy them, to make them visible, to shine the harshest, clearest light on what is real inside what has been built, versus what is simply held up by the appearance of reality. His paralysis is a structure he built a long time ago. Not because of you. Before you. A structure that says, this is how I stay safe. This is how I do not lose what I cannot afford to lose. This is how I do not become someone I do not know how to be. He installed that structure years ago and has been living inside it ever since, and the twin flame connection activated every single alarm in it the moment it became undeniable. He is not moving because moving would require dismantling something that has kept him functional for a very long time. Mercury conjunct Mars conjunct Saturn in Aries right now is making this even more specific. Mercury rules the mind, the words, the ability to communicate what is being felt. Mars rules the impulse to act, to push forward, to close the distance. Saturn sits on top of both of them and says, not yet. Not like this. Not until you understand what you are actually doing. The result in the divine masculine's interior world right now is an experience of wanting to speak and finding no words, of feeling the pull toward her and finding his own feet unable to carry him, of understanding somewhere, beneath the rationalizations that something needs to happen and being completely unable to make it happen. His body is full of unspoken things. His system is holding him in place. You feel it. You have been feeling it all week. Here is the thing you have not said out loud yet. You have been waiting for him to move so that you would know what to do. Not consciously. Not in the way of sitting and deciding that your life is on hold, but underneath the surface, in the organizing principle of your inner world over these months, the question of what happens between you has been the central axis around which everything else has arranged itself. Your growth has been in relationship to the connection. Your healing has been aimed at what is between you. Your understanding of yourself has been built through the lens of what you are to him, what you represent to him, what the connection reveals about you, what work you need to do so that the distance closes. That is not wrong, that work is real. The growth that has come from it is real. But there is something underneath it that Saturn is now forcing to the surface. The axis has been external. Differentiation theory, which comes from the work of Murray Bowen and was later developed by David Schnarch in the context of intimate relationships, describes a specific psychological capacity, the ability to maintain a clear, stable sense of self while remaining in deep connection with another person. To know who you are without needing the other person to confirm it. To feel your own feelings without becoming flooded by theirs. To stay present in the intimacy without losing the thread of your own interior. Schnarch called this internally validated intimacy, and he made a distinction that matters enormously in the context of what you are experiencing right now. Most people, when they enter intimate connection, practice what he called externally validated intimacy. which means they need the other person to reflect them back. They need the response, the confirmation, the reciprocity, the mirroring, to feel secure in who they are inside the connection. There is nothing shameful in that. It is how most of us learned to do love. We learned it from our first relationships, from the way our earliest caregivers responded or did not respond to our needs, and we carried that template into every intimate connection that followed. But it creates a particular problem. It means the self becomes organized around the other. Not maliciously, not even consciously, just structurally. The inner world orients toward what is coming from the outside. And when the outside goes quiet, when he becomes still, when the mirroring stops, the self does not know where to orient anymore, because it has been looking outward for its own signal. This is not a criticism of you. This is an incredibly human thing to experience. And in a twin flame connection, where the resonance at the level of the soul between two people is so strong, where the mirroring is more intense and more total than in ordinary relationships, this pull toward validation from outside herself becomes magnified to a degree that is almost unbearable at times. The mirroring was so extraordinary in the beginning, the way he reflected you back to yourself, the way you felt seen, fully seen, in a way that nothing before had ever quite managed. That quality of being reflected so completely is part of what makes the twin flame connection feel like recognition, like coming home, like finding the thing you did not know you were looking for. And it is also what makes his withdrawal so devastating. Because when the mirror goes quiet, the self that has organized itself around the reflection does not know who it is anymore. That is not weakness. That is what happens when the most powerful mirror you have ever experienced suddenly stops reflecting. But here is what Saturn is pressing on right now. The mirror was always on the outside, and the work that this connection has always been asking you to do is to find the mirror on the inside. This is the part that is uncomfortable to hear, because the twin flame journey, as it is often described, positions the divine feminine as the one who does the inner work so that the union can happen. And that framing, while it contains real truth, can accidentally create another version of the same trap. The work is still being done in the direction of something external. The healing is still aimed at an outcome. The self is still organized around the connection, just in a more spiritually sophisticated way. Differentiation, as a genuine psychological capacity, does not ask you to stop loving him. It does not ask you to detach or give up or cut the cord or manufacture indifference. Those are not differentiation. Those are suppression dressed in spiritual language. And suppression, no matter how beautifully it is framed, is still the self-avoiding contact with what is actually true. What differentiation asks is something harder and stranger than any of that. It asks you to become someone who can hold the full reality of what you feel for him. The love, the grief, the longing, the frustration, the knowing, all of it. Without that feeling determining who you are or what you do with your life. It asks you to stay in the connection, fully, without the connection being the thing that tells you what you are worth. That distinction between staying fully present to what you feel and allowing what you feel to define the shape of your life is not a small thing. It is also not the same thing as spiritual bypassing, which is worth naming directly because the two can look similar from the outside. Spiritual bypassing, a term introduced by psychologist John Wellwood, describes the use of spiritual ideas and practices to avoid dealing with what is actually painful. The person who says they have released attachment because feeling the attachment is too much to bear. The person who speaks of divine timing while secretly using that framing to avoid facing what is actually not working. The person who claims to be at peace when what is actually happening is suppression wearing the costume of acceptance. Differentiation is the opposite of this. It requires you to feel everything, to make no argument against your own grief, to not explain your longing out of existence with spiritual language, to not reframe your pain into something prettier than what it is. The differentiated self feels the full weight of all of it, and still, from that fully feeling place, chooses how to move. Not in reaction to the pain, not in service of the pain, in alignment with what is genuinely true and genuinely valued, underneath and alongside the pain. That is the hardest form of honesty there is. And it is the central developmental task of the twin flame journey for the divine feminine. And it is exactly what his paralysis has been pressing you toward. Not because he planned it that way. Not because it is comfortable or fair or kind, but because the soul contract between you has always had this learning written into it. The specific pressure of his inability to move has been creating the specific conditions under which the only real option, if you are going to stay sane, is to find something inside yourself that does not require him to move in order to be okay. That is differentiation. And the version of you that develops it is the version of you that the connection was always trying to produce. Here is another thing worth understanding. The differentiated self does not perform security. It does not pretend to feel calm when it is not. It does not manufacture acceptance of things that are genuinely painful. All of that is still suppression. Differentiation is the capacity to feel the full weight of what is true, including the pain, including the grief, including the longing, and still make choices that come from your own values and your own interior, rather than from the panic of the wound. It is feeling the ache, and still choosing to move through your day with your own desires at the center. It is knowing the connection is real and not allowing that knowing to keep you from building a life. It is loving him and not needing him to love you back in a particular way in order to know that you are someone worth loving. That is the threshold you are standing at right now. There is something you can feel that is different from the understanding you have been accumulating. You have understood on a cognitive level that you need to focus on yourself. You have heard it said in many ways, many times. You may have even said it yourself to other people who are walking this path in the way that you sometimes understand something well enough to explain it to others before you have truly landed in it yourself. But understanding a thing and arriving at a thing are different experiences in the body. What some of you are arriving at this week in the stillness that Saturn has forced on the collective field is not another understanding. It is a felt sense. Eugene Genlin, the psychologist who developed the practice of focusing, described the felt sense as the body's direct, wordless knowing of a situation before language arrives. Not the thought about the situation, not the emotion as you have named it. The felt sense is the whole, complex, bodily awareness of what is actually happening before language has organized it into something manageable. It has texture. It shifts when you pay attention to it in a particular way. And it knows things that the thinking mind has not yet caught up to. What you're touching this week is a felt sense of yourself that does not include him. Not permanently. Not in some resolved, concluded way. Just in a moment of genuine contact with who you are when the question of him is temporarily set aside. The way you might set down something you have been carrying for a long time, not to abandon it, but just to feel your arms without the weight of it for a moment. And in that moment, something becomes available that was not available before. You notice what you actually feel, what you actually want, not in relation to him, not translated through the lens of what the connection means or what the journey requires or what healing is supposed to look like. What you, as a specific person with a specific interior life and a specific set of desires that belong entirely to you, actually want to move toward. That noticing is not the end of the twin flame connection. It is the beginning of a version of you that can actually be in it. The divine masculine in his paralysis does not have access to this yet. His structure is still running. His system is still doing what it has always done, managing, rationalizing, maintaining the arrangement of things that keeps him from having to feel what he feels at full volume. He is not cruel, he is defended. There is an enormous difference. But the nervous system responds to what is in the field. And when she begins to differentiate, when she begins to organize herself around her own interior rather than around the question of what he will do, the field changes. Not in a dramatic or immediate way. Not in a way that either of them could point to and say, there, that is the moment. In the way that the air changes when something that was held tight finally releases. He does not understand what is different. He cannot name it. But his system feels it. Something in the field that was pulling toward him has stopped pulling quite so hard. Something that was organized around his movement has reorganized around something else. And his system, which has been calibrated to the particular quality of her reaching, notices the absence of the reach before his conscious mind does. This is not a strategy. Please do not read it as a strategy. The moment it becomes strategic, it stops being differentiation and becomes another form of the same reaching, just in disguise. This is something that happens because it is genuinely true, because you have actually arrived somewhere new, because something in you has genuinely reorganized around your own center. The Twin Flame Journey Tracker and Progress Workbook exists exactly for this phase of the journey. 39 pages built to document what is actually shifting in you over time, not just what you feel on the hardest days. 8 stages mapped so clearly that you can see where you genuinely are versus where fear tells you you are. A synchronicity log so that the signs appearing in your life stop getting lost in the noise of ordinary days. Daily practices centered on loving yourself that keep you, not the connection, at the center of your own attention. Weekly reflections that help you see the patterns you would otherwise miss until they are already gone. Monthly reviews that show you in your own handwriting the trajectory of your growth even when the connection feels frozen and far away. The link is below. Because you cannot always feel your growth when you are inside it, but you can see it when it is documented. There is something the Twin Flame journey does that no other relational experience does, and quite this way. It finds the exact place in you that has not yet learned to stand on its own. Not to wound you there, to develop you there, to press on the specific underdeveloped capacity until you grow it. And it does this through the person who is simultaneously your deepest resonance and the one who cannot, at this particular moment, give you what that underdeveloped part of you is reaching for. That is not cruelty. That is architecture. The soul contract between twin flames is not a contract for comfortable love. It is a contract for the specific development of the soul through the exact friction of not getting what you want from the person you most want it from. And what grows in that friction, if you do not collapse into it, if you do not harden against it, if you stay present to it without being consumed by it, is the capacity to be fully yourself without requiring his confirmation. His paralysis has been precise. It has been asking you this whole time to develop the one thing that his coming back cannot give you. Because if he came back before you developed it, you would simply continue organizing yourself around him at a deeper level of intimacy, which is not the union the soul contract is pointing toward. It would be reunion without transformation. It would be the same two people with the same patterns, attempting the same connection from the same unresolved places. And the twin flame soul contract does not settle for that. It is not gentle about this. The soul contract is not interested in what is comfortable. It is interested in what produces growth. And it has an extraordinary ability to arrange circumstances in exactly the way that will apply maximum pressure to exactly the right places. His paralysis is not random. It is not bad luck. It is not even entirely his choice. It is the soul contract doing what it is designed to do, which is to create the specific conditions under which the divine feminine has no option but to develop the thing she came here to develop. Post-traumatic growth theory, developed by Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, describes a phenomenon that has been documented across hundreds of studies. The paradox of the most profound psychological and spiritual growth in human beings does not come from positive experience. It comes from the confrontation with what cannot be controlled, with loss, with the shattering of the assumptions through which we have organized our understanding of how life works. When what we believed would always be available to us turns out not to be available in the way we expected, something in us is forced to rebuild from a different foundation. That rebuilding is not simply recovery, it is expansion. The person who goes through it does not return to who they were before. They arrive somewhere they could not have reached any other way. New possibilities become visible. Relationships with others deepen because the capacity for genuine intimacy, not the performed version of intimacy but the real one, expands. A sense of personal strength develops that was not there before. And a shift in priorities occurs, a reordering of what matters, a clarity about what is real versus what was assumed to be real. That changes the fundamental shape of how a person moves through their life. That is what this journey has been doing, not destroying you, building you from a deeper level than was accessible before. The union the soul contract is pointing toward requires two differentiated people. Two people who can feel everything they feel without losing themselves in the feeling. Two people who can be in the deepest possible intimacy without one of them disappearing into the other. Two people who each have a stable enough interior that the connection between them does not destabilize who they are but instead expands it. He is not capable of that yet. The work he needs to do is still ahead of him. Saturn is pressing on him too, in a different way, through his paralysis, through the mounting internal weight of what he has not allowed himself to feel, through the slowly increasing cost of maintaining the structure he has built. His reckoning is coming. It moves on his timeline, not yours. And it will come when the pressure of maintaining the structure becomes greater than the fear of releasing it. She is becoming capable of union right now, not in the future. Not once more healing is done. Now, in the actual arriving at her own center that is happening this week, in this transit, in this specific stillness, and what is being built in the field between you, in the specific tension of his frozen state and her arriving, is the energetic ground for a kind of connection that neither of them has been able to have before. That is what this moment is, not a setback, not evidence that it will never happen. Not the universe asking you to accept that this is as far as it goes. The very specific, very precise construction of the next phase. Something is going to shift in the coming weeks. Not necessarily in him, though his system is already feeling what is changing in the field whether he is conscious of it or not. The shift that is most important right now is happening in you. And it is not the kind of shift that announces itself with clarity and certainty. It is the kind that you notice in retrospect. The kind where you look back after some weeks have passed and realize you have been making different choices without consciously deciding to. Where you notice that you have been referring less often to the connection when you are deciding what to do with your day. That you have been feeling your own feelings a little more cleanly, a little less filtered through what they mean for the situation between you. That you have been making space, small at first and then larger, for what you actually want, separate from what you have been hoping for from him. That is differentiation in practice. It does not arrive in one moment of revelation. It arrives in a series of small moments in which you choose your own interiority over the familiar pull of the reach. It is the moment when you feel the impulse to check his energy and you pause, not because you are playing a game, but because you genuinely ask yourself whether that is where you want your attention to go right now. And sometimes you choose to go there, fully and consciously, because you are allowed to love him and be aware of what is happening in the field. And sometimes you choose differently, because you notice something else asking for your attention, something in your own life that is offering itself to you. It is the moment when a door opens in a part of your life that has nothing to do with the connection, and you feel genuine interest in walking through it. Not performed interest. Not interest that you have constructed as a coping mechanism. Real curiosity about something that is yours and not contingent on anything he does or does not do. It is the moment when you are describing yourself to someone and you notice that for the first time in a long time, you described yourself without reference to the journey. Without mentioning the connection, without filtering who you are through the lens of what you are experiencing with him. You described yourself as the person you are when that is not the central story. These moments will feel strange at first, a little disorienting, like you have briefly forgotten something important and then remember it again. That is normal. The self that has been organized around the connection does not reorganize itself overnight. It does not happen in 1 week of a particular transit. It happens gradually, through the accumulation of small moments, through the practice of choosing your own interior as the orientation point over and over, until it begins to feel less strange and more like who you actually are. And then something shifts in the field that is not explainable by anything external. Saturn is slowing things down right now so that only what is truly solid can stand. The structures built from fear are going to feel the weight of that slowing. The things maintained through effort and avoidance are going to feel the fatigue of holding themselves together. And what remains when all of that settles, what stands without effort because it is real, will be visible in a way it has not been before. In him, what remains is the love he has not been able to act on, the knowing he has been suppressing, the pull toward her that no amount of distance has been able to dissolve. In her, what remains is who she actually is, the woman she has been becoming through this whole journey, the version of herself that was always the destination of everything that has been hard. Both of those things are real. Both of them are standing. And in the specific field created by his stillness and her arriving, the next movement of this connection is taking shape, not according to the timeline she had hoped for, in the shape that the soul contract has always been building toward, which is always larger and stranger and more real than what either of them could have planned for themselves. You are becoming what is solid. In a week when Saturn is making everything account for what it is actually made of. That is not a small thing. That is everything this journey has been building toward.